Chikohomero. He is the researcher at the Institute for Security Studies with a special focus on Zimbabwe. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, what's your reaction to the total shutdown in Zimbabwe?
Good evening to you. It has been long in coming, and it has been, I could say, it has been expected. The situation has become untenable, and this has been coming over a very long period of time. The government's unbridled desire to borrow money, to spend what it does not have, and to draw down on the very limited foreign currency reserves was surely going to lead to such a situation. So, in a way, at ISS we had really predicted that this kind of social unrest and chaos would be coming, and that the government really needs to put its house in order and really take decisive action. But it seems that there hasn't been that appetite within even the President Mnangagwa's government to make very hard economic decisions.
I mean, this has been hailed as a new dawn. I mean, President Emmerson Mnangagwa being catapulted into the highest office in the land has been hailed as a new dawn. But there's absolutely nothing new about this.
Really, you have said it. When the former president was removed, the ZANU-PF machinery remained intact. If anything, I would say it was rebooted and strengthened. What you have seen today is possibly the default mode of ZANU-PF, that when it has been pushed and when it has been challenged, it responds with heavy-handedness and repression. President Mnangagwa has no really record of being a democratic or knowing how to respond democratically, let alone the current VP. From what we have seen in the last weeks with how they have handled the doctor strike and the teacher strike, it's very indicative of a system that has really learned nothing and forgot nothing from its 37 years in government.
I mean, the government has also issued a statement saying that these protests are actually West-sponsored acts, and the organizers of these protests have also sought financial assistance from regime change agents in the United States and as well as Germany. Should these concerns be taken seriously?
I think for all of us who are familiar with the Zimbabwean situation, this has been the drumbeat. This is what ZANU-PF has been chanting whenever they fail to deliver. Whenever everything that points to their failure, pointing to indecisiveness, they resort to the blame game. They resort to regime change. They resort to pointing to the West and having Western sponsored. But what you see in Harare, it's just an expression of frustration. It's an expression of bitterness, and this has been simmering for a long time. In terms of the economic situation, the citizens have really been overburdened. The tax, Professor Mtuli introduced the 2% tax across the board. One of the guises for the increase in petrol on Saturday was to say the petrol has not increased, the price has not increased as such, but we have just increased the levies on petrol, and it is now about between 60 to 70% between both petrol and diesel. So you have a citizen which is so overburdened, and it has reached the end of its wits. And this is a normal reaction, I would say, an expression of bitterness, an expression of frustration that is just finding an outlet in demonstrations.
Well, when President Emmerson Mnangagwa took over office last year, he promised an economic turnaround for the impoverished country. And, we also saw the introduction of a 2% transactional tax in October, and the country's money woes even worsened. I mean, is it safe to say that President Emmerson Mnangagwa is now losing grip on the finances, or rather of the economy of the country?
Well, the economy was always going to be his biggest stumbling block. President Mugabe had created a system where something like a Ponzi scheme, where they created money out of nothing through the issuance of treasury bills. The unbridled desire and appetite for borrowing from local banks had resulted in them printing electronic money. Now, President Mnangagwa's harsh a hurried decision to get into an election meant that they needed to fund that election. And ZANU-PF has always survived on patronage, in creating clients around itself. And this requires money. From the 5 billion deficit that Mugabe left, within a year, President Mnangagwa has almost managed to double it. And this shows that this has always been something that is out of its depth when it comes to these economic matters.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Well, as mentioned earlier,